am so excited to be here with my friend Alicia. We had an incredible conversation last week. I had been following her, actually kind of stalking her on Instagram. I absolutely love what she, what her message is. I love how she shows up. Like, honestly, when you told me you're 25, I'm like, how do you have this knowledge at 25? You're such a bright light in such a sea of crazy right now. And I would just, I wanted to have this conversation with you because I really connected with you on the phone, and I wanted to share your story because I think it's really powerful. You definitely connected with me when we were chatting, and I wanted to talk a little bit about how, your past doesn't define you, what you've been through in the past, how you were raised, the people that you've met, the friends, the relationships that you've had, they don't define you. And Alicia has done something just absolutely beautiful with past trauma and turned it into a message and turned it into a lot of love and power for other women. So without further ado, my friend, I would love to hear from you and just tell people a little bit about yourself and where you are and where you came from.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Alicia McCloud. I am unleashed. I am a poet, writer, speaker, baker. I do a little bit of everything. And I'm super excited to be well, I'm in Georgia. I'm in the US of A in Georgia, and I'm just glad to be a part of this conversation. Um that the greatest thing going for me right now is that I have just authored my first book, a book of poetry. It's called The Sunflower Project. It's available on Amazon, and it's really, I started writing poetry and me or just to heal. I was dealing with those traumas that we're going to get into today. I was a victim of emotional abuse in relationship. I um, am really rooted in my faith. My family dealt with a major injustice, and it caused me to kind of become a little lost in my way in my existence. And I started to write poetry because I was looking for some kind of way to get those knots of confliction unraveled and settled inside of me, from inside of me, out of me. And so I started to write. And before I knew it, I was writing my story. Before I knew it, I had the Sunflower Project, and it is my greatest accomplishment thus far. And it's
Wow.
really helped me find my way.
I mean, so many people underestimate journaling. So many people underestimate creativity to
Right.
express yourself and to work through trauma. So many of us keep it bottled up inside. We don't talk about it. We don't write about it. We don't do anything, and we bury it. And as you know, when you bury it, it creates other problems. There are other things in your life that will come up. And so, you know, I'd love for you, we got into a little story about your family.
Mhm.
And I would love for you to share that story because I think that it's really important for people to understand how unjust it is. And this was a conversation that I am so grateful that I could have with you because we talked about, the way of the world and how things are and how, we're in so much of a divide right now,
Mhm.
right? And I'm just going to be as honest and kind and polite as I can, but like I grew up in a white community, okay? I grew up in a white community. We had, I think, two Indian families that I know of. The only kids in school that were Asian were exchange students, and I
Mhm.
think like we were raised with one Black family in our community. So when we talk about the Black Lives Matter movement, when we talk about injustices and uh, how you were treated or how your family was treated, I got really emotional
Mhm.
because I didn't understand that. Like I have absolutely not a racist bone in my body, but I didn't understand how people of color were being treated. I had no idea. They have different conversations with their children about dealing with the police. They
Mhm.
have different conversations about being out in public. They have different, and I'm not saying just in the States, I've talked to a couple of my friends in Canada too, and the injustices that they faced here and the treatment that they've had. And for me, it's unacceptable. And I couldn't even comprehend that that happened. And the more I started talking to people, the more stories I heard. I talked to a man that was incarcerated for something that he never should have been incarcerated for and spent 17 years in prison for something he didn't do. And
Mhm.
And in the US, a third of your population has been incarcerated. Like, that is astronomical, and it's not okay. It's basically prison labor is what it is. It's so wrong. So I would love for, and I wanted to, I don't want to take away from your story, but I really wanted to say that because it's important to me to have these conversations. Even though it's uncomfortable for me, it's probably uncomfortable for you to share these things. But I think the awareness is what's important, and that we come together now. We've been pushing apart so often, and I think it's so important that we are aware and we have these conversations. So thank you so much again for being here, and I would love for you to go into a little bit more detail about that story.
Of course, I just wanted to thank you for being brave enough to admit to just the truth. And it's, I think that, the Black community, for so long we kind of normalized a certain treatment. We weren't okay with it, but it was almost expected. So there was some kind of quiet on our part, and it made it easier for other people from other races to kind of turn a blind eye, just to, oh, that's just, the
We
norm
didn't know.
for, exactly. So until we call a finger to it, or you shine a light on it, then once you do that, then okay, now we can talk about, we can have a conversation. Now we can, talk about moving in a better direction. So thank you for saying that, and thank you for speaking up, and thank you for having me and letting me. My family is super important to me, super important to me. I'm talking about the maternal side of my family. So my mom, she has 5 brothers. My grandmom and granddad are still married, still together. There are so many first cousins. Uh, literally get together 35 deep for every holiday, Sunday dinners we would have together. We worship together on Sundays. My grandfather is our pastor. So my mom, her 5 brothers, and all of the children, we would get together deep. We have loved and supported one another for as long as I can remember. That's just what we do. And my oldest uncle he is ambitious, and he built a company to give back to the community, a mental health company where he was servicing people in our hometown, in our county, and in 3 other counties. Wow. And was working in another facility. And there was the injustice happening that he was doing this great thing, and the state came in with a weak accusation and seized and destroyed everything.
An accusation, no evidence, but an accusation.
It was an accusation that came in, seized fire, and I was young whenever this happened, so I wasn't able to really connect with my adult family to be able to like understand it completely.
Yeah.
But I do remember it being traumatizing to know like my mom is at work one day, or the community that he built just in the business. We were all so close. They were all working and going at it. And next thing you know, GBI is coming in and they demanding charts and they closing people in rooms. And it was just really, really reckless. And so I remember being terrified. And ended up being that they put my entire family on trial. No criminal history, no criminal backgrounds. And my uncle was actually sentenced to prison for a conspiracy charge. My mom stands on trial, and the time in question, she wasn't even employed at the facility. My uncle's wife and another aunt of mine, they were the only ones to go to trial. And clearly, just with my mom's case specifically, it was a ploy to try to get my family to break, because you called on my family members to stand trial. And so whenever, especially with my mom not even being employed, whenever the issue at hand was, brought up. And so they were made to, or advised to, spend the night in jail just so that they would not be seen as a flight risk. I'm talking about a family business that's doing good in the communities.
Something you were proud of. Exactly.
Without a criminal background. So, it was one of the darker spaces for us to exist in. And me, I was in college. So it's my senior year of college. And I was literally wondering, or looking for God. Like, where are you? Where are you? When you coming in with the rescue?
Like, you're
Because
supposed to help right now.
right, where you at? Where are you? Like, when are you coming in with the rescue? Because I know
Yeah,
that
yeah.
family to this great mission, and I know that they have been serving well. And we all proud of what we do. And all of my family members had a stake in the company, so you know they really snatched our livelihood and ended up convicting my uncle, finding him guilty of conspiracy, and a captain in the military, a preacher, a father, a brother, a son, went to prison, criminal charges, and it's still a shocker to me. And I began to like connect the Black Lives Matter movement, really, really connected to
I'm
like
sure.
justice system.
Yeah.
Like, what in the world? How many of our Black men are incarcerated, not able to be in their homes, not able to, touch communities, not able to be with their families? And then when you come out of prison, there's the whole reconstruction system. So how you
Yeah,
get
that's a totally different ball game when you're out, right? Because
exactly,
now you've got to start a life from being incarcerated. Now you've
exactly,
got to tell your story from being
yeah,
from jail.
exactly. And so now there's the issue of getting a job, and trying to rebuild your life with this thing just weighing on you. And God is good. And the time for me, my issue was, why did it go to that point? And my story and what I testified to in the Sunflower Project, it talks about my faith journey. My family has survived that. We're fine now. And my uncle, he would give you a totally different powerful testimony as to how, God showed himself to be God in his life. But for me, in that time, I was like, this is not fair. This
Of
is not
course.
fair. I don't understand it. It hurts. It
Yeah.
hurts to
Yeah.
be a person or just good people, to try to do good things for other good people, and to not be honored for that.
It's
Not to be
unjust.
honored for that.
It's unjust is what it
It-
is. And it's
no.
not fair when you go and try and do the best that you can for your family, for your community, for everyone.
Mhm.
And something like that happens. I know that it impacts not only that time, but the decisions that you make for the rest of your life and how you behave. Like you said, you come out and now you're nervous. Now, I would love to hear your uncle's story, but like, now he's nervous. He was a go-getter. He was ambitious. He wanted to help his community. He wanted to do all those things. That
He
must
was
suck you dry of all the motivation you have to do any of
yeah,
them.
the business was successful, which is why, in my personal opinion, why it was targeted, because the underlying thought is that, oh, a Black man and a Black family is doing this great of a work, something must be wrong, something must be illegal, something must not be okay. And that was heartbreaking. I mean, why?
Yeah.
Why?
Why? Like that doesn't even make sense.
Doesn't make sense. Not let's applaud this business or this CEO for doing this great thing. Let's pay attention to what's happening, listen to the testimonies of the clients, and that he was doing this amazing thing, or that the company itself was doing this amazing thing. Let's just assume that something was wrong, something was off, come in and not ask any questions, just seize and destroy. And I felt so betrayed by a system that was supposed to protect
Protect
us.
you. Yeah.
And even to this day, I deal with forgiving the people
I'm
involved.
sure. I'm sure you do. It takes time. It takes time. We can forgive people. Like we can forgive people because, they're only operating at their best possible self. Like you have to understand that, right? That when people make decisions, they're making decisions based on the best possible decision they as a human can make at that point in time in their life. Doesn't always work out to be the best decision, doesn't always work out to be fair, right? There's a lot of things in life that aren't fair. But when you put so much love into something, it's soul sucking and it's heartbreaking. So I really appreciate that you shared that story. And it's important for me to share that story with other people so that they understand that this doesn't just come from nothing. There's a lot more behind the scenes that people don't talk about. And so one of the other things that, that I really admire you for is that one of your first relationships, and it's something that I actually resonate with very well. One of your first relationships was abusive. And I would love, well, I wouldn't love for you to talk about it, but I would love for you to shed some light on how you recognize that, because sometimes when we're in emotionally abusive or verbally abusive, when you are dealing with a narcissist, you don't realize that you're being abused. And you also don't realize that abuse doesn't just come physically. It can come mentally and emotionally. So I would love to just have that conversation with you as well, because you've overcome so much in your life already. And again, at 25, I'm like, I feel like you've had so many life experiences that like people don't have. And so you come across so well spoken, so put together. Like you've also done a lot of healing on the other side. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation with you.
Oh, thank you so much. You make me feel like a superhero.
Good. That's the job.
So yeah, you made a valid point about emotional abuse or abuse that's not physical. And for me, I was in love. I was a baby,
I
but
know.
still love. Like, and I honestly, I emotional abuse to me, it creeps up like fog. Like you see it, right? It's there. Or actually, I think it might just be around you before you even kind of put your eyes on it. And it took me years to even address or give it a name. Like I was in college when I was realizing, as I was listening to a professor, we were in a psychology class, and he was talking about a certain event, and we were reading, and I was like, oh, so when a person withholds affection or withholds physical intimacy or any kind of intimacy, when a person beats you down for not being what they think you should be, there's a label for that, there's a name for that.
Right.
Oh, it's called this, emotional abuse. Wow. And then I watched myself, and I dealt with it even in college, the effects of that relationship. I saw so many bad habits like just form within me. I second guessed myself. I second guessed my thoughts, my opinions, if I was beautiful, if I was worthy. It all went back to that idea of being worthy. And for me to have been involved with him when I was 15, I mean, and I'm 25 now, like you said, it took me years to be brave enough to address it, to call it what it is, and then to really, really dedicate myself to the healing process. But whenever I was spiraling, I made a home in just the eye of the hurricane, honestly, where everything that he had said, the ways that he treated me, the ways that other men had treated me, I allowed that to be my reality. That
Yeah.
swirled around me consistently, and it made me feel crushed. It made me feel damaged. It made me feel unlovable and undesirable. And so it it has been a long journey. It has been a long journey, and I feel more powerful now because I am coming into myself. I'm finding myself, and it's been, like I
Yes,
said,
you are.
year walk. So am I grateful? Absolutely. But is that a real deal? Is it hard to see, especially whenever you are dealing with the beautiful and intense emotion of love?
Yeah.
It wasn't always that way, but somewhere imperfect people shifted or turned something that was beautiful into a struggle between obsession and domination.
Right.
And there became that poison. And I think we were both too young to kind of walk away to even embrace or start to say, like, hey, healing is necessary. We got to get out of here. We have to take care of ourselves. So, yeah, that was a and has been a rough go, but I feel like I'm on the other side of it now.
You are, because of how you show up. And the thing is, what we don't recognize until we're adults, until we have, a fully developed brain and adult thinking, what we don't realize is that a lot of this trauma or this behavior is generational.
Mm,
So we've had this passed down. We've seen it like mimicked in our parents and our grandparents. We've had it passed down to us, and we think that this behavior is okay. We think that this is what is normal behavior. So you look at that person, that you were with, and think, wow, how could they do this to me? And then you look at their family life, and something I shared with you on the phone that I'll share now is often we don't talk about these things because we don't want to hurt people. We
mhm.
don't want to hurt the people that we were in the relationship with. We don't want to hurt their family. We don't want to hurt our family, because a lot of the times when we're hurt, our family hurts, right? And
Right.
so we keep it inside, and it's really interesting because when I had this conversation with you, I said, you said it took you 10 years to get here. It took
Mhm.
me almost 20 to admit that one of my first relationships that formed how I showed up in relationships, that formed who I was, that gave me really bad habits and made me date a lot of really bad men,
Right.
started from that first relationship, that first time I fell in love. And
Mhm.
that first time that I was verbally abused, the first time that I was emotionally abused, like I remember him coming over and sitting on my couch, and within 5 minutes I'd be crying. And I'm not
Mhm.
a like I'm not a crier. I'm a strong person. Why is this happening to me? Like, why do I feel so small? Why
Right.
do I feel so terrible?
Mhm.
Like, this person makes me sad.
Mhm.
And I started recognizing, but he was somebody that was very popular at school. All the girls
Yeah.
wanted to date him. Like,
Right.
how could I be so, I was the crazy one, right? Like, how could I be so crazy that this guy would like me? And yet here I am being miserable with him. And the girls that bullied me because I dated him, he went on to date those girls, or one of those girls, and made her life miserable for 3 years. And so you see the patterns, and I recognize the patterns, and I didn't talk about it for so long because I didn't want to hurt anybody in the process, but I hurt myself. I
Mhm.
hurt myself, and I hurt people in I acted poorly in relationships. I manipulated situations because I was hurting, and I didn't realize, being that young, that was the impact that was made on me back then. And
Mhm.
so I really commend you for doing the hard work that a lot of the times your peers aren't doing. They're going down that path of partying and hanging out with people and doing whatever they want, right? But you've done the hard stuff. You've done the hard work, which means that you've understood what happened and then dealt with your emotions to overcome it.
I think the biggest piece, and you spoke about generational issues, and I would say that just our social environment is also just contributing to this. Spread your brokenness. It doesn't matter. You don't have to slow down. You don't have to think about what you feel or what you want. Just, hey, keep going, go pass it on to the next person, and it makes it okay to some extent. Or even teach it, we're now teaching people not to feel at all. I'm blocking feelings out. I don't want to feel because I've been hurt or this and that. And I don't, I cannot fit there.
It
I
doesn't
feel
work.
out of place like that, honestly, literally. And what I really came to realize when it came to me and healing is that I cannot pair the responsibility or
Thank you.
stick the responsibility to any other person. I cannot wait on him to be accountable, to be responsible, to apologize. If I want to be whole, I have to make the decision that that is mine and I'm worth that. Not that I'm worth the misery, like you talked about, and being in that. I'm not worth no, I'm not worth the discontentment. That's not where I am. That's not what is for me. I'm worth more than that. And if I want to have wholeness, if I want to have, the just contentment in my life, a better quality of life, then I'm going to have to stop looking at him, stop looking at any person.
Blame anybody.
I had a chain of poor relationships after him or in the midst of him, however you want to call it, because I was involved with him for a full decade. So I had to stop looking at people and start looking at Leash. Start looking at Alicia. What does Alicia need and what does that look like? And that is literally how the healing process began. I can't pass the blame. He's a hurting and broken person. I was drawing hurting and broken people because I was hurting and broken.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You want something more, you want something better. I can't. I even feel a bit of compassion there because I know what
Absolutely.
it's like to be hurting and to be broken, to have made a mess out of certain situations and not know how to get out of it. But I had a decision to make on whether or not I would be a person who suffocated under the messes that I made, or if I began to pick up the pieces and start to clean it up. And I had to clean it up because I could not compromise on my wholeness. So
No, you can't. And so, here's the thing. When you hide those things, when you push them down, I used to think that my vulnerability was a weakness. I used to think crying was a weakness, right?
Mhm.
Like, I didn't want to show that I was weak. I was bullied for a really long time, and I was like, I'm not weak.
Right.
But what you learn as you grow and you heal is, number one, both of us are speaking from a scar. we're not speaking from an open wound. So
Mm-hmm.
there is healing that needs to happen, whether that is therapy, whether that is a community of people that are going to help you through it, whatever that is, there's a space and time that you have to reflect. And when you take full ownership of your life, like I've been happily married we've been together for 12 years. We've happily married for almost 10. Maybe we've been together for 13. I can't do math, but I don't depend on him for my happiness.
Mm-hmm.
He enhances my life. I'm so
Mm-hmm.
happy he's in it, but we are not in a codependent relationship. We're in an independent relationship because we are both independent people that coexist together, that support each other, but we don't need each other. And that is something that is very valuable for women to learn, that when you take extreme ownership of your life, you are not looking for somebody to take care of you. You are not looking for somebody financially to take care of you, any of those things. And you start realizing that your happiness comes from being in alignment with who you are and getting your message out. Your vulnerability, the very thing that you felt fearful of, shameful of, embarrassed about, whatever it is, that very thing
Mm-hmm.
is the thing that will save you and will save so many others. That's your mess. That's your message. You know, that's what you need to take and find some sort of healing in, so that you can help other people not feel the pain that you did, so that they don't feel so alone. Because like you said, you know, you probably suffered in silence for quite a while, like I did. And it's so important now. Like my life is so much more full, much like yours. You know, when you have more confidence, you contribute more to society. You're more vocal. You help other people because you have the confidence to do that. And you don't get there without shining a light on the things that scare you, or the things that make you feel less than, right?
Yes, goodness. It was, for me, it was confronting the shame. And,
Yes, yeah.
you know, for a while, my thoughts toward myself were so unkind, so unkind. I asked for this, and that comes with the abusive relationship. No, this is my fault. I should have did this differently. I know he likes this way. I should have been there.
Totally.
You know, that whole kind of I did this to myself was never. I I was just speaking yesterday about the difference for me between accountability and blame.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, that is blame, that is guilt, that's shame. And I feel like those things are without love. Me being accountable for my actions, accountable for, you know, losing self-respect, losing self-love, me saying that, you know, how many bad decisions I made after that because I refused to heal. Okay, I can compare that to accountability. But before, it was negative. It was beating me down. It was helping me to stay, you know, within that hurricane of just poor poor decisions, poor relationships, just bad. Once I could look at that, at my story, and say, this is my story. It
Yeah.
was written this way.
Yeah.
Now, am I going to continue to deny myself love because of something that I cannot change? Or am I going to look at my situation and say, I survived that? Somebody is fighting for me. I should fight for myself with the same tenacity, with the same want to, that says I'm worthy. It was about, for me, confronting that part of it. And I think as long as we give shame and guilt power, you know, you're not allowing yourself to bloom from your situation. You're not allowing yourself to be a complete individual. I can't deny any part of my past. It is who I am. It's a part of who I am. Am I trapped to that? Am I stuck to it as far as like this is all that I am? Absolutely not. But I will not allow myself or anybody else to make it ugly, which is how I'm going to find my power, which is how I'm going to walk.
Absolutely. Oh, I love how you said that, because it's about and this is so important, you guys, if you're watching, take notes. It's about reframing your story. You've told your story in the worst way to yourself over and over and over again, probably for years, wishing you could rewrite the past, wishing you'd done something different, wishing you behaved. I can't tell you the memories that I have from 20 years ago that I wish I would have behaved differently at 16. Like it's so stupid, right? Like how would you have the capacity to behave differently without life experience? But I rewrote that. Or not rewrote it. I repeated it to myself over and over and over in my head until I learned to take responsibility Now that I know better, I'll do better. Now that that is not who I am, you can be a completely different person from one minute to the next. When you learn something, you can, people might be judging you on who you were 5 years ago, and you're a completely different person. And so what's very interesting is that when I talked to this gentleman who was incarcerated for something that he didn't even do, that if he, like, I'm going to say it, if he was white, there was no way he would have gone to jail for this. And there were people that he'd met with the same sentence who didn't go to jail that were white. And so that was really fascinating. But what I want to kind of bring together in this is what you just talked about, reframing your story. Whenever I teach from a wound, or sorry, from a scar, not a wound, I reframe the story in the way that I want it told. Right. And so what this gentleman did when he got out of jail, he'd done all of these accreditations, he got an education, and he was looking for a job, much like you. And he'd be like at the top of the list. And then people would call in his references and do a background check, but he didn't tell them that he had been incarcerated because it was something that was shameful for him. And so he'd get to the top of the list, he'd get to like the end of the road, he'd be like, yes, we're going to hire you. And then 2 days later, they call and be like, I'm really sorry. We can't because you have a criminal record. So what did he start doing? He learned from that. He got embarrassed enough that he was like, this is not my story. This is not who I am. And he started going into interviews and from the get-go saying, look, this is my resume, but I need to tell you my story. I need to tell you who I am because this is what happened in my past. This is what I've learned. This is what I've acquired since then. And this is where I am now and where my vision is. And so when he started doing that, his next job offer was a $200,000 offer a year on a salary. And they're like, yeah, we'd love to have you. Please come in. Right. And the crazy thing was he ended up doing a presentation in prison for Mark Zuckerberg. And then years later, he's now working for one of Mark Zuckerberg's charities.
Wow.
So, like we talk about reframing stories and how powerful that is. It's different when you live in shame and you think, okay, I was in an abusive relationship. I can't believe I was in there. And then I remember my husband once saying to me, and this was about a different relationship. And he said, Christina, you can't be so mad at this person because, and as much as you hate to hear this, you allowed yourself to be in that relationship. And I was like, oh, that hurts. Like, oh, that hurts to hear. But you know what? He was so right. I was hanging on to this anger and blame when, hey, you know what? You learned something and you'll never let anybody ever treat you like that again. Right. And so when I frame it that way and I tell this story now, the guy that I dated that, some guys have bad habits and this guy had 10 bad habits. So I got it all out of my system. But like when I tell that story now, I laugh about it, but I've learned so much since then. And making those decisions, they're just life lessons. They don't define who you are. The guys that you date, the things that you do, the things that have happened in your past, whatever, none of that defines who you are now. So you need to start reframing the story and feel empowered by it instead of disempowered by it.
Exactly that. The way my uncle gave it to me, it was that I had reduced myself to situations like that. And I just kind of looked at him. I was like reduce myself.
That doesn't feel good.
I didn't like the way it sounded, but I had to really, really analyze my situation. At this point, I'm a woman. I'm 25, and I'm giving him an account of something that had just happened with this guy, and he was like, I was saying like, that's not me. This is not me.
Yes, yeah, it's not you.
Exactly, and he was saying, yeah, and as long as you're choosing that, you're reducing yourself to that kind of a situation. And I let that wash over me. I said, wait a second. I did not go through with the whole worth journey and the fight for my worth and my identity to go right back into something that was going to strip me or try to strip me of it again. Amen. I'm not have to fight for that. I shouldn't have to fight for that. I should walk in that, And so when he gave it to me like that, I really, like you said, I had to kind of step out of it, look at the framework that I was allowing myself to exist. Yep. Hey, what's going on? What are we going to do right here? And make a decision, really make a play. And it's been my business since I've come into my womanhood that I tell my side, my position, my story, and I don't allow anybody to decide for me what's beautiful and what's not. It's facts. These are just facts. It just happened.
Yeah.
But look at this product here. Look at this woman that you're seeing now. And I thank God for vulnerability and openness, because it's just that allowed us to connect.
Yeah.
And I look at what work is being done just because we were brave enough to have a conversation about an open and honest conversation about life and about our lives. Now there's connection. Now there's unity. Now we can connect to the next group of women or men or whoever who are in need of healing, because I mean, we all do. We all do. Who need
Absolutely.
to know we're not trapped by our past, and we get to reframe our story. We get to produce from our pain, and it's okay. It makes us even more beautiful. It makes us more human. It makes us approachable. It makes us lovable. In my opinion, because like, ooh, I feel a little bit more strong because of that testimony. I can see myself in that. I am proud of that woman, and oh, I can do it too. I can do it too. You know, that's what it is, and that's what it's about for me now. Even writing the Sunflower Project, I had to, not just for my own healing, but whenever I realized the population of women who like really just needed the permission to say, hey, this is me too. And I have not touched that part of my life. I have not touched that part of my heart. I suppressed it. I hid it away. But when you wrote this, oh my God, I was able to confront, some things that I've never been brave enough to confront. And it just, I feel gratitude all the time for just, just transforming and allowing myself to do that, allowing myself to love myself again, despite what my story contains. So
you are an incredible human. I am so grateful to connect with you. Seriously, thank you so much for being here today. Where can they find you on social media?
I am on Instagram and Twitter at I Am Unleashed. I am on Facebook, Unleashed LLC, and on Tumblr. I love Tumblr.
I'm on Tumblr.
Tumblr at I Am Unleashed. I'm building that. Cool. But yes, really on Instagram, you catch me with all my new projects. I do have some things coming up. I've been working with some new treats for the Sunflower Project, just kind of getting it in the different people's hands. So yeah, definitely catch me there and keep your eyes peeled. But the healing process, I'm always dropping gems about the healing process.
Oh gosh, you guys got to follow her. She's amazing. She is such a bright light. You are so beautiful inside and out. I am so grateful for you. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate you.
If you think this video can help a friend, make sure you share it.